I mean, wow. That's Fox News host Sean Hannity, game planning a post-insurrection approach, which current Fox News commentator Kayleigh McEnany happily accepts. There's a lot to talk about in this letter. I'm very pleased to be joined by Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. He's a member of the January 6th Select Committee, author of the excellent new book, Unthinkable: Trauma, Truth, and the Trials of American Democracy, which I spoke to him about on the podcast Why Is This Happening?, which you can get wherever you get your podcasts. Congressman Raskin, there's a lot here. I guess the first question is, this is a solicitation of cooperation. How do you understand, how should we understand this letter to Ivanka Trump?
Well, we're closing in on the target, Chris. I mean, it's been a very good week for us with the Supreme Court decision rejecting Trump's efforts to block release of a whole bunch of documents. Lots of people coming forward to testify, and we're really developing a fine-grained portrait of what happened on that day. Ivanka Trump is a critical figure because she was there in the morning. We believe she was there when Trump was still trying to twist Mike Pence's arm. Remember "you will go down in history as a patriot or a pussy" overture towards him. And she was also a key figure in trying to get to pull Trump back, apparently. So she could really, perhaps complete the portrait of what happened on January 6th for us.
Yeah, and I didn't know about this conversation she saw with Pence. There's another item in that letter I want to ask you about because it talks about testimony from General Keith Kellogg. So I'm going to read again. This is nothing that's not public because this is in a letter, and ask for you to sort of maybe give us some context here. It says in the letter, in his sworn testimony, General Keith Kellogg explained the White House staff wanted the president to take some immediate actions to quell the unrest. Did you think that she, Ivanka Trump, could help get him, President Trump, to a place where he would make a statement to try to stop this? Yes. Question. He didn't say yes to Mark Meadows or Kayleigh McEnany or Keith Kellogg, but he might say yes to his daughter. Answer. Exactly right. So tell us about what you've learned about this effort, this apparently desperate effort to get him to stop this.
Well, the impression we have is of successive entreaties directly to former President Trump to essentially call off the dogs and to tell everybody to go home. Obviously, it was a matter of walking 20 paces over to the cameras and just making a speech. And there were repeated efforts to get him to intercede. And I think, Ivanka Trump figures highly now in this because people thought that he might listen to her. But what we're getting is a very clear sense that the people in the immediate entourage of Donald Trump knew what a terrible thing this violence was, that it was illegal, it was unlawful, it was unconstitutional. We believe that the White House counsel was rendering advice to that effect, and yet Trump continued to, try to march everybody off of the plank.
And it also seems, and again, this is from the letter here, there's these video outtakes, and there's been some reporting about multiple outtakes necessary to get Trump to say leave, even though he says, I love you, and you'll never forget this day. It's a very bizarre performance. But the Select Committee understands that multiple takes of the video were filmed but not utilized. Information in the Select Committee's possession suggests the president failed in the initial clips to ask rioters to leave the Capitol. I mean, more and more detail that he was utterly resistant to doing the one thing, it seems, that everyone agreed was necessary to stop the violence.
Well, he had been setting this political coup in motion, directed at Vice President Pence. He had helped to activate, we believe, these domestic violent extremist groups. And obviously, we've got seditious conspiracy charges now against one group of them, the Stewart Rhodes Oath Keeper group. But also, he had been activating this huge demonstration of tens of thousands of people to become a mob by essentially sicking them on Mike Pence. And we have statements from a lot of people who were in the demonstration saying they were waiting to hear what Mike Pence would do. And when they got the message that he was not going to cooperate and bow down to the president, at that point, all bets were off, and they decided to tear up the place.
Yeah, and the mention there of the tweet about Mike Pence, as I said in the intro to the segment, I mean, at the time, it was appalling. I mean, it seemed very clearly to be essentially painting a target on the man's back. Your letter suggests that perhaps Ivanka has some knowledge of what went into that or what the reaction was to it. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, there are different ways of interpreting this. I mean, obviously, there were people participating in this political effort up until the point when everything got really deranged and insane. But it's also suggestive of the possibility that there were people who felt like they had to try to contain and control Donald Trump. And psychologically, he was just out of control. And
Right.
they were looking at ways to try to rein him back in.
We should note that the Ivanka's press person put out a statement that's essentially non-responsive and says that she didn't speak at the rally and that she publicly stated that the violence must stop immediately. Please be peaceful. That seems non-responsive, but I suspect we will get a more responsive response from Ivanka Trump at some point. Congressman Jamie Raskin, who is the subject of the new MSNBC documentary Love and the Constitution, premiering next month. Thank you so much, Congressman.